Here we go. I think we're live. Here we
Got
go. We
it?
are
Okay.
live on Facebook. So
Yep.
I apologize for anybody who's logging in and watching us with our technical glitches to start off, but we just kind of decided that it might be fun to have sort of a fireside chat every week about real
Mhm.
estate investing. And I guess to start this week, we'll sort of give a little brief background about myself and my good friend Karen, who has agreed to join me on this. And I'll just start since I'm already talking. But basically, I think, I don't know, what has it been? Probably 15, maybe 20 years ago now that we actually met. And we met
Mhm.
through another mutual friend, and we had this idea to do this sort of info product together, but our common thread was that we were all real estate investors just doing different things in our businesses. And so immediately Karen and I connected, and the rest is history, sort of, as they say. And I've done tons of fix and flips and some wholesale stuff, and I've had rentals and condo conversions and apartment buildings and things of that nature, and I've invested in land and kind of just all across the board. And I know, Karen, you have a wide variety of experience as well. And
Mhm.
we just thought we could kind of brainstorm, share, talk about deals that we're doing, sort of educate, entertain, and have a little bit of fun for everybody. So Karen, I'll kind of let you go and tell a little bit about your background, and thanks for being here with
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, of course. I'm laughing because we talked when you said, "Hey, we're getting ready for the call." I was like, "Oh my gosh, I still have a big sweatshirt on because it snowed here last night in Colorado, and it's so cold." And I'm looking at you like all sunny and little sleeveless shirt on. I'm like,
Oh,
"Wow,
you're
it's
so,
such a
well, it's
different
raining
me now."
here. So
But
I'm like,
but
I need a sweater. It's raining. But hey, the real question
but
is since we're still kind of in COVID era, at least you have pants on, because half these people on Zoom nowadays don't have any, pants or
Yes, I'm happy to show that I do have on pants. Um, yeah, no, but I also think what's interesting is, just um, that speaks to different markets as well, and what climates are doing and what all that other stuff. Because you're in Texas, I'm in Colorado. It's, so that's kind of a fun thing we can talk about sometime too. But yeah, I'm Karen Schaefer. Heather and I met, as she said, years and years ago. I believe we were both, at least one of us was in our 20s then. It wasn't me, but um, and so we've known each other for a long time, and we've done a lot of um, things together. And sometimes they're just in support of each other. Sometimes it's a project together, etc. But my husband and I have done quite a few, as Heather mentioned, fix and flips. We also have had rentals and vacation rentals and storage units and commercial properties, the whole 9 yards. I built and grew a large home staging training company from a local market to 16 countries. Heather and I both have our real estate license, so we're both very real estate heavy, and we like to talk about it. We like to teach other people about it as well. But there's a lot to talk about because the environment has changed so much over the years, and it is continually changing regardless of the area in which you live or that you want to work or invest in. I think it's a
especially
really
now we're in
interesting time.
such crazy times. And I almost
Mhm.
forgot, I used to teach and train real estate investors all over the country. I held a webinar and teleseminar series for, I don't know, better part of a decade. And just at the beginning or in the middle, you just have to make that little
Mhm.
disclaimer that we are not accountants, we are not attorneys. Always seek legal and tax advice and all those
Mhm.
good things. This is just kind of to share kind of what we've done, what we're doing, things that we're seeing, and things that you can do to sort of get your feet invested, or um, build your portfolio, or what have you. And just a side note, Karen and I are always open to deals. So if you happen to be listening and are out there getting your feet wet and don't really know what to do after you get to a certain point, we're always looking. It may not be a good fit, but we are always looking for things. So we're always open to
Yeah.
that. So
So feel free to.
for sure. So since this is sort of our introductory webinar, Zoom, at first, thank you all for being patient with my technical challenges on this, because it's the first time I've done a live Facebook Zoom situation here. So I apologize in advance for anything that may be technically challenged. But we thought for today, we might just sort of talk about some of the like if you were to go and watch a late night infomercial or, see an ad on Facebook pre-COVID to go to a free seminar on real estate investing, there's a handful of things that people sort of get their feet wet. And again, we've mentioned all the things that we've done. And the three that people sort of say, okay, well, this is how I'm going to start in real estate, or sort of, I guess, kind of the three pillars, right? Because we have to understand each of these no matter what we're doing. So it's just wholesale, like a fix and flip, and rentals. And so pretty much everything else comes into that. You could be doing vacation rentals, you could be renting storage units, you could be renting, mobile home parks, but then you just have the mechanics of rentals. So we thought today we might just take a few minutes and sort of go through an overview of what sort of a wholesale deal, a fix and flip deal, and what rental property looks like, just real overview-ish. And we can just dig in through the coming weeks and different sessions that we have. So.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Where do you want to start? Which one? Wholesaling?
Well, how about we start? Yeah, let's start at wholesaling, because I think for somebody just getting started, it can be a really easy way to get in because it's very little to no risk whatsoever. So, you've done a lot more of it than me, because I was always greedy and said, "There's so much money on this, I'm just going to do it myself."
Well, I think, I don't know if it has to do with greed or time or resources or knowledge. I mean, I think those can all fall underneath doing a wholesale deal. But it's certainly where I started, because when I started doing real estate investing, I didn't have any money. And by no money, I mean like no money. And so I'm like, sometimes people go,
we'll have to tell our how we got started stories one of these days. I think it'll give people a lot of hope, because we were surely not, money in the bank rolling it around saying, hey, we want to diversify. We were going, I want to eat.
Yeah. And I'd like to eat just one step above ramen, but, mostly for those many years was that. But yeah, so wholesaling to me is one of those, easy entry methods into real estate investing. And I'm gonna give you the real simple version, and we can give you some more context as well, or some more, some further details into this as well. But basically, wholesaling is, you get a property, you're able to acquire a property, you put it under contract, and then you sell the contract to the next real estate investor for a profit in the middle. And so a lot of times people can wholesale a property for a couple of grand, you can wholesale it for several grand, and it really depends on how much bologna's in between the bread, kind of thing. So how much money is in the deal for the person that's going to buy the contract from you. And there's lots of details. It's also called a signing. And wait a minute, Heather, I don't want to mix people up. So I'm really talking about signing. We should be talking about wholesaling, just selling it. Right. I'm kind of confusing things here.
Well, I kind of look at wholesaling as selling the contract too. I mean, I feel like anything.
Okay.
I mean, kind of wholesale, kind of fix and flip, but no, we're on the same page.
Okay. So I'll say two different things. Wholesaling, you can just get one and sell the house cheap. Okay. Boom, that's wholesaling. There's the other way that most of us refer to wholesaling is as assigning a contract. So if you hear those terms, they're often used interchangeably amongst a real estate investor crowd. So basically, you'll get a property, you'll assign it to another investor, and you're basically assigning the contract to somebody else. So you're saying, hey, I found this property and I paid 200,000. It's worth 350. It needs 50 grand of work, and I want $5,000 for the contract. Somebody else gives you the 5,000. They actually end up closing on the property, and they do the work and then sell it at retail. So that's kind of the simple thing, about wholesaling or assigning. To me, the more complicated part, because you can just use a simple contract, you can use state contracts, but you can Google a contract as long as, everything goes through okay. But I think the more complicated part is, how do you get the deal? Really, right. That's really what it is. And a lot of times, you guys, you get these word of mouth. Like if you'd be surprised. Like I've had friends pick up a phone and call me before and say, my sister needs to get out of her house. Mm-hmm. And you're like, really? Okay, but you'd be surprised how often it helps somebody else. And so sometimes it can be simple, and other times you need a very specific, doesn't have to be complicated, but a very specific and consistent marketing plan in place as well. So do you want to talk a little bit more thoroughly about wholesales, Heather?
Yeah, I mean, I think we could do a whole segment on it, so we can sort of just give everybody an overview today. But I do think it's important, if you're going to do this, you want to put yourself out there and let people know that you're in the business to do it. And I will say that, and it goes into the next kind of, if we say one is wholesale, two is fix and flip, and three is rentals. It all comes down to the numbers. And the biggest mistake that I see when people are trying to wholesale, to say, I want to get my feet wet, I want to make a few $1,000s to be able to invest in some marketing, to do some of the, bigger things, fix and flips, is that people just don't really pay attention to the numbers enough. And I think that that's just super, super important. So like the mechanics are easy, right? You go find a value, and we understand wholesale, like Walmart buys, this little binder clip at wholesale rates, and then turns around and sells it at retail. And that's essentially what we're doing. We're just doing it with property instead of binder clips and coffee cups. And so, mechanically it's fine, but then the question is, how do you go find the binder clips at a price that is going to make sense? And how do you know what the market's going to pay for the binder clip, and what it's going to cost to put it on the shelves and staff it, and all those things? And so it's the same thing with real estate. We need to know all those numbers. And so it's kind of easy. And I say kind of, and Karen mentioned things are always changing. And this is one of the reasons I got out of the real estate investor education circuit, if you will, about a decade ago, is because there's a lot of people that teach it but aren't in it right now. So if you're not in it right now, you don't know that mortgage applications are up 40% year over year, and the market is insane. And, a lot of the things that people teach just are not working in these markets, simply because it's a different market than what they might have done their deals in a decade ago. And that's not to say all of them, but just, to put it out there. So I'll say sort of the easy thing is figuring out costs. But again, lumber is up, appliances are hard to get, workers are harder to get. So you have to factor in some of that. But let's just say, in Karen's example, that it needs 50 grand. That's the part that people can kind of figure out. You can have a contractor come in, you can find out those numbers. But what people forget are all the other costs. Like, as long as you hold the property, you have you have possibly a mortgage, you have taxes, you have insurance, you have utilities, you have, just regular expenses with owning the property. You have expenses when you purchase the property. So you're going to pay for title insurance, you're going to pay for closing costs, you're going to pay, any number of other fees. And then when you go to sell, you're going to turn around and you're going to have realtor commissions and closing costs, and possibly, concessions and all these other things. And what I see more often than not when people start is that they forget all of those other expenses. So they think, oh, well, I'm, buying it for 100, putting 50 in, selling it for 200, I'm gonna make 50 grand profit. Well, you're actually probably gonna make 10. Like,
that's so cute. Yeah.
And that's the other thing, when you're out there learning from investors on the teaching circuit, a lot of times those are the numbers they'll tell you. But you might make 10, you might make 20, you might make 30 in that scenario. You might say, well, I'm not going to use a realtor. So if you don't want to use a realtor, I get it. I sold FSBO most of my own properties pretty much all along, but I still had to account for at least the 3% on the other side. Because if a buyer comes ready, willing, and able, you're going to say to the agent, I'm not paying a commission, because then you don't have a buyer. So it's real important to understand all those numbers, because I have investors sending me wholesale deals all the time, mostly apartments, and they're down in San Antonio right now. And they give the numbers, and I'm like, that just doesn't work. Like, you have to know these numbers are the people that you're going to try to sell your contracts to, or just not going to pay attention to you. You're going to be wasting their time. So it's important to know those numbers. And I'd say that's probably the most important thing to get down when it comes to wholesaling. I don't know if you have a thought on that, Karen.
Well, I think it's very funny because a lot of people are like, well, what are the numbers? What are the percentage rates? And I'm like, well, that's up to you. Like, it depends on how much money you want to make. A lot of times with real estate agents, we hear them advise their investors, well, you have to buy at 80 cents on the dollar. And that's why those agents don't work with many investors, because we know we can't really make any money at 80 cents on the dollar if it needs fix up. obviously. And most investors do not buy on appreciation. So Heather and I happen to be living in very strongly appreciating markets right now. But generally speaking, most investors do not buy on appreciation because you can't rely upon appreciation. So, they might be now going fast and furious. Well, how fast can I fix that up? But the reality is the numbers are your own. So, can you make money if you're buying at 70 cents on the dollar? Do you need to buy at 60 cents on the dollar? It depends on how much fix up is in there. Some people say, I have a couple investors that just work off of, they don't even work off of percentages. They work off dollars. So they just say, if I'm going to spend 200,000, I need to walk away with 40,000 in my pocket. So they just have a number in their head. And I think that it's important that you guys know on a wholesale so how much do you want to make off the paper, which is what we're talking about when we sell a contract. We're just saying we're selling the paper. How much do you want to make? And then what are the group of investors that you're able to flip to? What are their numbers? Because that's, right, I think, very important to know is, when I first started, I was lucky enough. I started going, just so you guys know, to a real estate investment club, just the real old fashioned grassroots way, met a couple people that knew more than me that could fix up a house, but I was good at finding a house. And at that time I was knocking on doors and I just wasn't afraid to do it because I needed the money.
Right.
So, broke is a great motivating
I was gonna say,
factor.
sometimes it's just how hungry you are.
I was broke. And so I would knock on doors and there wasn't a lot of women in the business at that time. So people trusted me a little bit more than a man knocking on their door. And that's how I started getting deals. But ultimately, I learned very quickly how much money these guys needed to make. And they were nice enough to share their clipboards, their paperwork with me and say, well, here's what I'm seeing. Here's what it needs to do. So there's no deal for me. And other investors would look at it differently. So that's the other thing I would add to what you were saying, Heather, is, just because one investor says no, that's why you want to work with a half a dozen if you're going to wholesale to them, because different investors will do different things. Some will do a complete, they are only capable of doing a, magnificent fix up. Others go, no, it's just lipstick on a pig. I'm just doing paint, carpet, and fixtures. So you got to, figure out who are your investors, which, does that property speak to them and how much money do they need to make? And the nice part about knowing how much they need to make is now you know how much you can make by selling the paper.
Right. You kind of back into it, numbers wise.
You back into it. Yeah.
And we'll go
absolutely.
into, I think, a more detailed, whole call on just wholesaling, just because I think it is a great way for people to get their feet wet and learn real estate investing. And so sort of, the next sort of logical step, I guess, if you will, is flipping houses. And this is, HGTV and seeing the, fixer upper, that's actually why I brought my license to Magnolia, because I resonated with that. And that's what I've been doing for many years. Pretty much, I'd say the majority of what I've done has been the flipping. I've wholesaled some deals for a number of reasons, but generally speaking, I would do the fix up myself. And you might be thinking, well, she has the money to do that. That's great. But when I started, I didn't have the money to do it. I was fortunate to find lenders and even just private investors who wanted a return on their money and just saw something in me where they said, oh, okay, I'm going to give this girl a chance. But I had, so basically it's the same thing as wholesaling. You're finding a great deal that needs some work, but instead of selling the paper, you're going to actually keep that wholesale fee in addition to the rest of the profit. So you're going to actually take the property and fix it up yourself. I'm going to see, I don't know how fancy I can be here. I'm going to see if maybe I can get lucky enough to show our recent fixer-upper, if you will, in Florida. And it's just on the market now, just to sort of give you an idea. But while I look for this, the thing about it is now you're shouldering the risk. So if you don't have the cash, and a lot of times a bank isn't going to loan you on a fixer-upper because it just needs an awful lot of work. So you're going to have to get what's called hard money. And I was very fortunate because I had a hard money lender who was willing to basically give me the whole cost of purchase, the whole cost of the repairs, and then I didn't have to make any payments until the property closed. So that's not a
Yeah.
common scenario, but you never know. There's people that say,
Right.
hey, you find the deal, you do the work, and we'll split the profits. So there's all kinds of scenarios. And some people say, well, I'm giving up this much money. I'm like, well, you're not. You're not giving up the money. You're just actually you're just actually getting a deal done that you would not have otherwise been able to do. So yeah, it doesn't look like I'm smart enough to put this picture up here. So I will post it in a comment after the fact here. But so when you are going to rehab the house from top to bottom, that's where you really need to know what it's going to cost, how long it's going to take, and have a game plan. When I started, we would literally do a mini business plan for every single property. From the time we purchased, we would have contractors lined up during the contract period. So the day we closed, they were out there doing demo. And the fastest turnaround I had was 53 days from closing table to closing table. So from the time we purchased it, fixed it up, sold it, and had our money in the bank was 53 days, because we, time is money. The faster we turn this, the higher return on investment we have.
And I think that's one thing that's, and I want to talk about backtracking to hard money too, but I think that that's one thing people don't understand. And even some of my investors today, despite how much I try to educate them, is they don't understand that you make more money when you turn your money faster. And so I'm not suggesting you take a bad deal or anything else, because it's just numbers, guys. Numbers have to work or they don't work. Plain and simple. That's all there is. And but the faster you can take that deal and and really make some money. Oh, here come your pictures. Then the more money you make. And so when Heather's talking about 53 days, that's really astounding, because you figure fix up time, and then you have a normal 30-day close, or you're lucky enough to get a shorter close. But that's astounding, and that's how you make money faster, and how you make more money, because you're using your money faster. But just to backtrack into hard money and soft money is, or a hard money lender, soft money lender, and a traditional lender. The hard money lender, we always say, oh, that's Guido in the corner of the cigar, and Pete's coming in, and stuff. And so but I'm just joking, of course, because we have an awesome hard money lender that we still use today on certain projects. And we love him, and he makes us a lot of money. Is he expensive? Sure, he is. When you compare him to conventional financing, you might pay 10, 12, 14%, and you might pay a point or two to get the money. But the truth is if we didn't have that money, we would lose 40, 50, 60, $100,000, just because we couldn't do the deal otherwise.
Well,
and so
that's the thing too, Karen, is instead of looking at just dollars, we have to look at return on investment,
right.
And that's time and money investment. But if I have to put, let's say, $20,000 down, let's say, to just cover my repairs, but I've got hard money for the other 100. I'm just keeping the math simple. And, I make 30 grand profits. I sell it for 150. I'm just keeping simple numbers here. Well, I've only got 20 grand in. I made 30 grand profit. I've made, 2.5 times my money. And, if I'd used hard money and had the whole 120,000 out of pocket, now all of a sudden I'm making, 15%, 20, or I guess 20% at that point. So I make 250%, or I can make 20%. And I'd always rather use somebody else's money than my own, personally.
Oh, me too. And it just allows you to move faster and do more when there's an opportunity available. Sometimes, you go, well, my money's tied up, but that's a great opportunity. Well, guess what? Get hard money. There's another thing called soft money, you guys, and that's really kind of a hybrid between hard money and a traditional lender. I won't spend a lot of time on that. You'll find them. Go to an investor club, do stuff like, you'll find them, but they're just a little easier to get the loan from, especially if you're tried and true. Not quite so expensive as hard money, but you do have to jump through a few hoops. And then you have conventional financing, which is, just like you guys bought your own house, just a regular old lender. It's going to take 30 to 45 days. They're going to need every single piece of information on your entire life, including your birth certificate and your shoe size. That's traditional money. There's nothing wrong with it, but we don't generally use it for a fix and flip. So
Yeah.
And Heather, you want to talk about your pictures that you've got up on the
So this
screen
is
here?
just an example. This is one of my favorite houses. So it's kind of a fun example. Can you see my mouse, Karen? I don't know if you can.
Yeah, and it's really pretty. You guys did an awesome job.
Yeah, well, let's cross our fingers that we get it sold soon. So this
Yeah.
house was kind of interesting. It was a wholesale deal. So, we also will buy from wholesalers. This happened to be my husband's cousin is also a real estate agent in Florida. And so he came across and he does a lot of work with the guy who'd owned, I guess the guy actually bought it. He bought it, sold it to us. So kind of the clothes wholesaler that Karen mentioned. And when he brought it to us, I said, this just doesn't make any sense because it was like 2,300 square feet. And I kept pulling it up on public records. I'm like, no, dude, it's like 1,000. What's going on? So they had put on 1,000 square foot addition in the back, but they had never done anything. It barely had framing up. And the layout was so stupid. It took me a good like 30 to 45 minutes just to sit in the space and say, okay, we need to redesign this. They had one extra bathroom back there. And they had the master bedroom right in the front of this 1,000-foot addition. And then half of the space, so probably 400 square feet, was just like a hallway going back to one other bedroom. And that was it. So we were able to put in 2 full bedrooms, 2 full bathrooms, a walk-in closet, a huge game room, and a laundry room in this addition. So we came in, we knocked this fireplace out because you don't really have a big use for a fireplace in South Florida. We knocked out all the tile here and put, nice new tile, obviously all the paint stuff. But you can see, here's the door here. So it's the same house. It's just, we got rid of the fireplace here. We also came in and we took out this whole wall here, and we had to actually put support beams in the attic. And you can see we mirrored it over here because we needed the wall for the beam to sit on. And all this was done permitting and up to, where it was supposed to be. But this particular wall here was pretty much the kitchen. This was just like a little U-shaped kitchen in here that was super tiny. There was a door off to the side. So we opened this whole place up and made it just kind of this big gourmet kitchen. And then there's dining room. And then if you go back that way, you have the whole addition. And so I show you this because you can do some pretty incredible things. And this is what I like to do when it comes to investing. I love to take ugly things. Maybe it's the designer creative background, but I love to take ugly things and turn them into something beautiful. And so that's kind of one of the fun things that you can do when you take these fixer-uppers. And now I've absolutely done lipstick on a pig and, painted and changed out some flooring and said, have a nice day. I mean, so I'm not saying now I'll have to be that nice, but you certainly can do those fun, big projects too, if you want to. And the payday on something like that, we're hoping to make close to $200,000 off of that. So, I mean, it's substantial, but it's been a lot of work, and maybe a topic about contractors is for another day.
and a lot of time. So 2 things is, sometime let's do a whole call just on, here's some great rehab examples. Here's what we did. Here's why we did it. And then, but what people don't realize too is on a project like that, where sometimes this isn't all pretty. Like we walk in 53 days, we walk away with our money.
Oh, no,
Sometimes
that's 2 years down the line.
Yeah, I was going to say, this has been a big project for these guys. And even though we said turn your money fast, sometimes you'll have a big project that you don't turn your money as fast. Sometimes you'll have a project that has been wrought with issues and people and all kinds of stuff, which is the case of this one. So it wasn't all pretty for these guys. They just stuck with it. So they'll get a good payday in the end. But this hasn't been a 53-day turn.
It's coming up on 53 years.
Yeah, 2-year turn. Yeah, it feels like it. But so just so you guys know, it's not all pretty. There's some pain, and that's why there's good gain on this, because we're all willing to put in the time and the effort and the sometimes the pain, which we rather not do, but it does come with
bigger rewards.
Come of it, yeah. So it looks beautiful though. Good luck with that. I hope it sells really well.
Fingers crossed. And so just to kind of wrap up sort of the intro-ish sort of call or video webinar or Facebook Live, whatever you do nowadays, we'll just sort of talk about rentals. And this is where a lot of people that have some capital and they just see the stock market going, totally crazy, going down, going up, going down. Today it's back to where it was the beginning of August. And, back in March or April, it was down to where it was 3 years ago. So, with the volatility, a lot of people are starting to say, well, I want to turn to real estate. And this is just one caveat that I'll put out there. Karen does a lot more rental stuff, things than I do, in part, and we'll talk about this maybe on a call about income property. Florida and Texas are states with no income tax, but we have high property tax. So it's a lot harder to cash flow in our markets than, let's say, Karen's, where her property taxes are, we pay tens of thousands of dollars a year on property taxes, where they may pay 2 or 3, but they have income tax. So there's the government's going to get their money, however they're going to get their money. Right. But the thing is as an investor and as a business, you have to weigh those options. So one of the things that's always interesting to me is real estate's in the media now. It's going crazy. The market's nuts. I mean, you can look at any website out there and they're talking about the real estate market. So this is the time that everybody says, hey, I'm going to jump into real estate. When in reality, this should be the time you're just kind of putting money into the sidelines, because at some point there's going to be a correction of some sort. And we can talk about what happened in 2008 another time. I don't foresee that happening again, because there were some market dynamics there that just I don't expect to see again in our lifetime, just because of what was going on underneath the surface there. But when everybody's excited about real estate, it's actually the time that you might want to hold off. Because, when they say it's a seller's market, it really is, which means it's not a buyer's market. But when it's a buyer's market, it's not sexy and in the mood, so nobody is jumping in. That being said, it's where people that have some capital or, have some money sitting on the sidelines and say, I want to build my retirement. I want a cash flow. I want an appreciating asset. How can I get some rental properties? Maybe I'll get a duplex or a fourplex and just kind of pay it off over time and build some retirement income that way. And so we'll just that's sort of the next piece that you'll hear about when people are starting to get their feet wet with real estate. And it's a lot of times it can be hands off. You find a great agent that understands investing. So, tell them what you want, show that you can move quickly, whether you have cash or you have a great lender that has vetted you and says, okay, Karen, you're good to go when you find the property. And then you can go put 20% down and have a cash flow stream of income. So let's say you buy a $200,000 property, and I'm totally making numbers up. You put your 20% down, and let's say it makes, now I got to do math. Let's say it makes $500 a month. You're making, $6,000 a year on your 20 grand. That's a pretty good return on investment, as long as you're looking at it in terms of ROI instead of just straight. And, not to mention the tax deductions and all the other things that come with rental property. So, it still can be a great opportunity to get into in a seller's market. It's just better in a buyer's market. And you really need to have somebody that you're working with that understands what makes a good investment and knows how to run the numbers. And Karen, you've done a lot more and a lot of different types of long-term hold investments. So sort of maybe if I just wanted to get some rental properties, what would you say to me?
I would say, so for rental properties, you can pay more. You don't have to have the same margin that you had, when we were talking about fix and flips or wholesales or whatever. A lot of clients that make a lot of money want the rental properties because they're great write-offs. So I have a lot of professionals that want to buy a rental. So doctors, lawyers, things like that. I have a handful of those guys that are always looking for them because they offset their income a little bit for tax purposes. But if you're just looking for a rental, I would say, number one, define the area that you want to hold the rental in. So, if you say, oh, well, I can get these cheap in this low end area, that's fine. That might be the right avenue for you. But the reality is is it an area where you see a lot of houses that are being torn up and there's no, the houses, the outsides don't look good and stuff like that, then it might be worth looking at a neighborhood that looks a little bit nicer. And so they don't get torn up as much. I think a big thing is like deciding what you want to do. Do you want to do Section 8 rentals? You want to do, what we call bread and butter rentals, the 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage rentals? Do you want to do high-end rentals? And we're not talking about vacation rentals. We're just talking about straight up month-to-month rentals. So we can talk another time about vacation rentals. But I think the best thing to do, for me and Heather, I don't know what you guys did, but we started with bread and butters. So
Yeah.
3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage was like a great model. We were in a mid-level neighborhood that allowed rentals, but it was still a decent neighborhood. And
Well,
we
there's
bought in all
always
kinds of
going to be a demand for that. There's not always going to be a demand for high
Always.
end. There'll be a demand for the lower price rentals, but there comes a trade-off with some of that. But the bread and butter stuff, there's always
Yeah.
going to be people that just need a good home, and especially the way the market is now, that just can't get, and as interest rates start to creep up, probably not in the near future, but all of a sudden the affordability goes way up, or way down rather. And so the rental market is just going to get stronger. So as you start to see signs of interest rates going up, that's the signal that, hey, this might be a good time to make sure we secure some rental properties, because people aren't going to be able to afford the houses anymore.
Well, and I think what's interesting right now, Heather, is that the houses are high, but so are the rental rates. And so I think people lose sight of that. Right now, even though our market is extremely high with a median price range of in the 400s, and yours is as well, but we can still rent a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage home in a very basic neighborhood for, over $2,000 a month. And so you can still cash flow on most of these properties. But it doesn't, I think everything comes back to, no matter what you're doing, whether you're wholesaling or flipping or renting, it's all numbers, you guys, and you have to figure out the numbers. And one of the things Pete and I always do if we're going to hold a rental is we always make sure that, can we cash flow at today's market price on the rent? And then we always take $300 off. Can we cash flow if the market drops and it's $300 less? And that's always, just our number. Well, if we can get 2,200 now, can we cash flow at 1,800 still on this property? And I would suggest you guys, kind of build in a little bit of a buffer, because rental rates go up and down, just like home prices go up and down.
Well, that, and people say, well, should I do a 15-year on a rental? And you might as well leverage the money as long as you can. If you want to make extra payments, you can do, the 26 payments a year strategy, and go research, how fast that pays it down. So you can pay it down when the rents are good and the market's good, but you're on the hook for less. So you can always pay it down faster, but be on the hook for the least amount of money that you have to every month. And the other thing I would say with rental is to build in, and it just depends on the rental. There's no set number. I like to have, 5 to 8% of the cost of of the value of the property just kind of set aside in case of repairs. So, a tenant demolishes your kitchen and you've just got it in reserve. So you'd maybe take 10% of the monthly rent that comes in and put it into a reserves account. And then when repairs happen, whether it's deferred maintenance, whether it's tenant damage, whether it's just, hey, it's time for a new roof, because homes need new roofs at some point. You have the money.
Or vacancy.
Yeah, and vacancy. I mean, because if somebody moves out on September 30th, you're not going to have it filled on October 1st in most cases. So you just need to account for some of that. Too many times, I think when we look at rentals, we look at best case scenario, assume it's never going to need any repairs, tenants are going to pay their bills on time, and nobody's ever going to move out. And it's just not real. So.
Ta-da!
And when we figure out that, we will not be doing Zoom calls, realtor work. We will just be doing our rentals that never have vacancies and only have good renters. So there you go.
We'll just be doing our rentals at that point. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, Karen, I want to thank you for kind of humoring me and coming along on this. I think, one, it's always fun to connect with you. And two, I think there's a lot of people that just need some good information out there. And, I'd like to continue to do them and have questions as y'all come in. We can share in greater detail. I know this is really superficial, I guess, if you will, just to sort of give you an idea of what types of opportunities there are, depending on what your interest lies, what your cash position is right now, and really, time, all those resources. So you can sort of think about it and do a little bit of homework. And we can dig into each of those. We can talk about vacation rentals. I know, that's a big hot topic. And I did my first one, I don't know how many years ago. And I told you, and you're like, hey, this is a great idea. And you, like many things, went and did it way better than I ever did it. And, and then market shifts and you say, okay, well, it might be time to transition to this now. And we've done quite a bit of land investing. We're in the process of, we just flipped a piece of land last month, and we've got 2 lots that are under contract to sell this month. And, I know you've got storage units. So there's a lot of opportunities, and we just kind of like to share them with you. Obviously look at any deals that you guys might come across, and just kind of share the information we have. And again, I'm here in Austin, Texas. I do quite a bit in the surrounding area here and in South Florida. And Karen, where's your kind of sweet spot area that you work?
Southern Colorado, Colorado Springs, Teller County, things like that. So mostly we try to stick here in Southern Colorado just because the market is so good right now.
So if you're in need or of interest in, whether it's investment property, whether you're relocating, whether you're selling in either of or any of those 3 areas, we'd love to also help you out there. So, well, awesome. I thank you so much, Karen. And I don't know if you have any parting words you want to leave with anybody, but I really appreciate you joining me on this. I know we've done a lot of different things over the years, so I'm thankful that you carved a little bit of time to do this one with me.
I just, I appreciate you asking, first and foremost. I love doing this. And you guys should all know that this was just kind of, Heather just called yesterday and she said, do you want to do this today? So this is just us talking. It's not us, hey, we've got this hard and heavy script or anything else. So I would say, if you guys have questions or deals to evaluate or anything like that, this is us talking. This is what we do. It's what we know. We're good at it. So, and it's fun for us to do this. So, we love to chat with you guys about your stuff too. And I appreciate that you asked me to do it, Heather. Thank you.
Awesome. And I promise I will get better and figure out the technology a little bit better between now and next week. So
yeah, you guys will be grateful that Heather's putting that all on her shoulders, because she's like, okay, Karen, all you have to do is hit this one button. So really, Heather's apologizing, but she's the one doing all the technical stuff.
And that's why I'm apologizing, because it's far from organized. All right. Well, thank you so much, and hope to see you guys soon. Bye-bye.